Hi all, this is Arvind here from Mindmajix, and today I welcome you all to this amazing session on PowerApps interview questions. So we are continuing with our interview question video series. Okay, and the topic for the day is PowerApps. The purpose of the video is that, like I've already mentioned in the previous videos as well. So here also I would like to mention, say for example, you have an interview lined up in coming few days of PowerApps. Okay, so this video will serve as a revision tool for you. Okay, so first you have to know all the concepts related to PowerApps. Okay, and once you go through this video, like if you're able to answer maximum questions that we will be discussing in this video, so there are very high chances that you will be successfully clearing the PowerApps interview. Okay, so let's begin with our first question. Okay, so the first and foremost question is, what do you mean by PowerApps? Okay, so this is a very basic and a very simple question. So Power App at its core is referred to as a platform as a service. So it allows you to create mobile applications that are capable of running on different platforms such as Android, iOS, Windows, and with almost any internet browser. Okay, so what are the different types of browsers? So let's say, for example, you can have Internet Explorer, you can have Mozilla, you can have Chrome as well. Okay, so Power App includes a suite of applications, services, connectors, and data platform that is helping in providing a rapid application development environment to build custom application as per the business requirements. Okay, so with Power Apps, you will be able to build custom business application quickly, which will be connecting to your business data that are stored either in the underlying data platform or in various online and on-premises data sources. Okay, so what can be the various on-premises data sources? So you can have SharePoint, Excel, Office 365, Dynamics 365, SQL Server, and so on. So this was a quick definition, or you can say a quick overview of what exactly do you mean by Power Apps. So let's move to the next question. So the next question is, explain the need and importance of Power Apps. Okay, so as you all know, Microsoft has introduced this tool, Power Apps. So there were a few problems that existed, and Power Apps has been developed to solve those problems. So what were those problems? So these are the problems as you can see on the screen. The first problem is lack of professional mobile application developers. So Gartner, which is a research organization, so this company had forecasted that the demand for the mobile application developers would increase at least 5 times more compared to the IT organization's ability to deliver. So this is the reason for this situation, and this is also the reason for deficiency of professional mobile application developers, which are very less, and this does not meet the number of required application developers. So this is the first reason. The next reason is that expansion of business data. So business data is expanded across various systems and exceeded the firewall and the software as a service cloud. So as data is stored in various systems, we cannot access the data from the application. And the third and the final reason is that application sharing and IT activities. So mobile applications are distributed through app stores and mobile devices. So this established an inheritance methodology to get the application onto the mobile devices. Okay, so these were the problems that existed before Power Apps came into the picture. And Power Apps solves all of these problems, and that too without any hassles. Okay, so let's move to the next question. Okay, so the next question is, what are the features of Power Apps? So Power Apps like Flow and other Office 365 automation technologies has capabilities and tools to let you create applications without coding. Okay, so as you can see on the screen, these are the features of Power Apps. So the first feature is that Power Apps is a collection of sample apps that you can use as a starting point, and then you can customize it as per your own requirements. A collection of more than 200 connectors for integrating data and systems across the Office 365 universe. Power Apps has a very simple drag and drop interface for the application creation, or you can say the application construction. And Power Apps also has tight connectivity with other Dynamics and Office 365 tools. Last but not the least, there is a robust support infrastructure in place, including a strong Power Apps community. Okay, so the purpose of having a very good community is that whenever you face any problem with Power Apps, you can write your queries in that community, and all of the people around the globe who are very well versed with PowerApps or who know PowerApps very well, so they can solve your questions or they can solve your doubts which are related to PowerApps. So this is the biggest benefit of having a very strong PowerApps community. So these were some of the features of PowerApps. So let's move to the next question. So the next question is, what are the applications of PowerApps? So PowerApps contains Azure application service so that employees can get their mobile applications quickly onto their devices. We can build new connections to the already existing business systems and thus enable any employee of the organization to develop their own applications. And the third point here is that PowerApps honors privacy and data security issues to maintain data access and corporate policies. So these were some of the applications of PowerApps. The next question is, what are the drawbacks of using PowerApps? Okay, so since you're already aware of the features of PowerApps that we have just discussed in previous part, so you must also know the drawbacks of using PowerApps. And this, I believe, is very important question as far as the PowerApps interview is concerned. Okay, so why you should know the drawbacks of PowerApps? So the benefit of knowing the drawbacks of PowerApps is that you should be able to analyze the scenarios of where you can use the PowerApps and scenarios where you cannot use the PowerApps. Okay, so this is a very important point that you must understand. Okay, so the purpose of any tool, like not only PowerApps, any tool is that you should be able to understand how you can use that particular tool to solve the problem. Okay, so this is the main, what you can say, the objective of this question. So what are the drawbacks of using PowerApps? Okay, so the most important drawback is that it is under the Microsoft 365 umbrella and it has licensing. Okay, so you need a valid license to use PowerApps, and PowerApps follows a convoluted licensing scheme. Plus, it is very costly to use. Okay, so I believe for the initial 30 days, you will be able to use it freely, and that too with some limited features. And after that, you have to go for a licensed version, which is a bit costly. Okay, so the support for a variety of device sizes and screen orientation is very limited in PowerApps. The connector ecosystem's throughput limits is another important limitation of PowerApps. Next, SharePoint as a backend will function perfectly with attachment control. So attachment control will be disabled if custom SQL is used. So use OneDrive, SharePoint, or other cloud storage to store attachments and refer to them in PowerApps as a workaround. Okay, and the last drawback here is JavaScript isn't supported in PowerApps forms. So these were some of the important drawbacks of PowerApps. So let's move to the next question. So the next question is, what are the types of applications that can be created in PowerApps? Okay, so PowerApps is one of the productivity development platform that allows us to create Canvas apps, common data services, model-driven apps, and portals. Okay, and the next question is an extension to the previous question. Okay, so the interviewer can ask you the difference between any of the applications or the different types of applications that are created in PowerApp. Okay, so this question says, what is the difference between a model-driven app and a Canvas app? Okay, so model-driven apps use a component-based methodology to develop a significant application. They comprise various components like dashboards, business processes, forms, charts, views, and other entities that create a user interface. So on the other hand, a Canvas application begins with user experience and enable customization interference through different UI controls such as charts, media, drop-down lists, text input boxes, labels, and much more. Okay, so this was a very critical difference between model-driven app and a Canvas app. Data service lets the data get integrated from different sources into one store that can be easily used in Power Automate, Power Virtual Agent, Power BI, and Power Apps. So this makes the application developing experience seamless and very hassle-free. So let's move to the next question. Okay, so the next question here is it possible to use multiple data sources in one Canvas application? So the answer to this question is that yes, with Power Apps, you can create any number of connections Once it is done, any number of data sources can be used in one application. The next question is, what are the different ways to submit data from PowerApps? So this task can be executed by using two functions. The first one is the patch and the second one is the submit form. So, however, the patch can also be used to upload partial data. Okay, so these were the two ways which you can use to submit data from PowerApps. The next question is, can we access local network data sources in PowerApps? Okay, so the answer to this question is very simple. Yes, we can easily connect to the local network data sources. So here what you can do is initially in such type of questions, which are typically a yes no question, so you can answer by saying yes or no. So in this case it is yes, and if the interviewer asks you to explain how can you do it, so you must explain it. Okay, so let's move to the next question. So the next question is, how can error handling be implemented in PowerApps? Okay, so there are basically two steps that you need to follow over here. So in the first step, we will have to get information about any errors through the error function. Okay, so this is the first step. And in the second step, through validation and data source info, some of the errors can be ignored even before they take place. Okay, so these are the two steps through which you can implement error handling in PowerApps. The next question is, how is it possible to use media files in the Canvas app? Okay, so in Canvas app, up to 200 MB of media for each application can be uploaded. However, what is majorly recommended is using media block storage services such as Azure Media or Azure Storage, and then embed the media URL to the application. Okay, so this is the procedure that you must follow to use media files in the Canvas application. The next question is a very important question as far as PowerApps Interview is concerned. Okay, so what do you mean by a collection and how they can be created? Okay, so this one is a special type of data source which is not connected to the service of the cloud, but it is connected local to the application. So this is generally used as the local to the device and cannot be shared among other devices for one or multiple users. Also, they can be saved as well as retrieved locally. To operate collections, clear function, clear collect, and collect can be used. Okay, so let's move to the next question. So the next question is, how different user environments can be created in PowerApps? Okay, so an environment is referred to as the space to keep, manage, and share the data, applications, and flow of the business. It can also be regarded as a container that distinguishes apps on the basis of different target audiences, security needs, and roles. However, creating or choosing the environment used basically depends upon the company and the applications that you are thinking to develop. Okay, so let's move to the next question. Okay, so this is another very important question. So how to define a local and a global variable in PowerApps? Okay, so to define a local and a global variable in PowerApps, you need to use the set function. Okay, and what is the purpose of set function? So the set function is used to set the global variable's value. So this holds an information piece temporarily, like the result of the operational data or the number of times somebody has clicked a button. Okay, and after that, you have to use the update context function to create the content variable, which holds the information temporarily. So guys, as you can see on the screen, this is the syntax for creating a local variable. Okay, so for local variable, what you have to use update context. Okay, first you have to write update context, and then in brackets you have to mention this is the round bracket and this is the curly bracket. Okay, so in curly braces you have to mention the variable, context variable, and the variable value. Okay, so this is the syntax that you must follow to create a local variable. So just to give you an example here, what you have mentioned, you have update context, and inside we have name as John and marks as 60. Okay, so this is just one variable, and here you can create multiple variables as well. Okay, so just you have to remember, for local variable you have to use update context. Okay, and if you talk about the global variable, this is the syntax that you must follow. So first you must use the set, and then the variable name and variable value. Okay, for example, in this set you can use, let's say you have to define a counter. Okay, so what is the job of a counter? variable. It just counts the number of occurrences of anything. Okay. And here you have to define the counter value. So here I've mentioned the value as 1. You can also set it to 0 and then it will keep on increasing. Okay. So this is the syntax for local variable and global variable. Okay. So let's move to the next question. So the next question is how to make use of the components in the Canvas apps. Okay. So components are referred to as the reusable building blocks for Canvas apps, so that the application makers will be allowed to create the custom controls and use them across multiple applications. Okay, so components either can be exported or imported in different apps across organizations. The components are helpful and allow you to build larger apps that have the same control patterns. For example, we can build a navigation control and use it across our application on different screens. Once a component is updated, all the instances in the app will be reflecting your changes. So components make sure that the performance is enhanced or improved and will also help in standardizing the look and the feel of the PowerApps applications in an organization. Okay, a component also consists of the input properties that are capable of receiving values from the application, and the component can make use of these internally. So components also include the output properties that are capable of providing output values to the application. Okay, so this was a brief overview of how can you make use of components in the Canvas apps. So let's move to the next question. Okay, so the next question is it possible to create Power Apps without gaining access to the license? Okay, so as we have discussed initially, you cannot gain access to all the features of the Power Apps without having a valid license. So the answer to this question is no. Neither the creation nor the consumption of Power Apps is possible without a license. Okay, so by joining up for a 30 days Power Apps trial, you may try out few of the features for free. If you don't have the Power Apps license, the trial plan gives you temporary access to the features such as it extends Office 365's capabilities like SharePoint Online, Teams, Excel, and so on. You can create and execute Canvas apps and Microsoft Dataverse and over 200 other data sources, including premium connectors and on-premises data. You also have model-driven apps that can be created and run. And with Power Automate, you can create automated workflows. You can also create and administer Dataverse databases and the environments. Okay, so let's move to the next question. Okay, so guys, the next question is also a very important question. So does flow depend on Power Apps? Okay, so the answer to this question is no. And this is actually a very tricky part as far as Power Apps is concerned. Okay, so Power Apps is the new form of the solution, the quick and easy web-based or device agnostic way, which helps in creating an application that is oriented towards mobile, being routed to SharePoint for forms. Okay, so it also makes use of the flow heavily, but it does not need the flow. And vice versa, flow can make use of Power Apps and is often using Power Apps as a front end for what it does, but it does not require Power Apps. Okay, so this was another very tricky and important question on Power Apps. So the next question is, what are the main functions of Power Apps? So guys, this is another important question. Okay, and if you talk about the function of Power Apps, so there are in total 3 functions. Okay, and let's talk about them one by one. The first function is the Power Apps search function. So Power Apps search function is used to locate the records which contain the required string. Okay, so the string can occur anywhere in the column. Okay, and if you talk about the syntax of the search function, so as you can see here, we have mentioned search, and what you must provide in the search, you must provide table, which the required string and the column. Okay, so just to give you an example, so let's say we have an employee table over here. Okay, and the employee table has 3 columns: employee name, employee ID, and employee salary. Okay, and these are the 3 employees that we have in our table as of now. Okay, so the first record is Rajesh, employee ID 01 and employee salary 15,000. Okay, similarly Dheeraj 02 and 28,000. The third one is Suraj 03 and 20,000. Okay, now in this table we will apply the search function. Okay, and what we have to search here, we have to search the string Raj, which is nothing but Raj, in this column, which is employee name. Okay, so how do we do that? So first we write the search, and in round brackets, we mention the employee table, like the table name, the required string Raj in this case, and the employee column. Okay, okay. So once you mention these things inside the search, okay, and if you execute this search function, so it will return all of the records that have this substring present in their names. Okay, so here it will return all of these three employees, Rajesh, Dheeraj, and Suraj, since they have RAJ, RAJ, RAJ in their names. Okay, so this was about the first function, a very important function, search. Okay, so the next function is filter. Okay, so the filter function is used to locate the records which fulfill a particular formula or a condition. Okay, and as you can see, the syntax for filter is very simple. You just have to write filter, and then you have to mention the table and the formula or the condition. Okay, so just to give you an example, the same employee table which we had in the previous search function. Okay, so here we have to apply the filter function. Okay, and what are we trying to search here? So here we want to search those employees who have salary more than 20,000. Okay, so to find out those employees, what we will do, we will just write filter, and here we will mention the table name and then the condition. Okay, so here we have mentioned EMP salary greater than 20,000. Okay, and once you execute this function, so what it will return? It will return only this row or this record. So Dheeraj 02 and the salary. Okay, so since 28,000 is greater than 20,000, so obviously this is our output, and Suraj will not be displayed in the output just because it is not greater than or equal to 20,000. Here we have only mentioned greater than 20,000. Okay, so therefore we will have only this record, Dheeraj employee ID 02 and the salary 28,000. Okay, and the third very important function of PowerApps is lookup function. So what do you mean by lookup function? So this function first locates a record based on the formula or the condition, and then it uses a reduction formula to reduce the record to a single value. Okay, so the syntax for lookup is very simple. As you can see here, you just have to write lookup, then you have to provide the table name, then the formula or the condition, and then the reduction formula. Okay, so just to give you an example, like from the previous slide, we have this employee table over here. Okay, and we have these three employees with employee name, employee ID, and employee salary. Okay, so now we have to apply the lookup function over here. Okay, and what we have to do, we have to find the salary of the employee whose employee ID is 03 or simply 3. Okay, so for that, what you must do, you must write lookup. Here you must provide the first parameter, which is the table name, which is employee. Then you have to provide the employee ID. So in this case, we have provided 03. Okay, and then what we have to display? You have to display a single value, which will be nothing but employee salary. Okay, so once you execute this lookup function, the output will be, as you can guess, the output here will be 20,000, which is a single value. Okay, so these were three important functions of PowerApps. The first one was search, the second one was filter, and the third one is lookup. Okay, so let's move to the next question. So the next question is, what do you mean by action and trigger in MS Flow? So if you talk about actions, so actions refer to the changes directed by a user. For example, you can use an action to perform the operations like a lookup, update, delete data in SQL database. So all of the actions will be directly mapped to the operations defined in the Swagger. Okay, now if you talk about trigger, so several connectors provide triggers that will help in notifying your application when specific events take place. So if you take an example of an FTP connector that has on updated file trigger, so you can build either a logic app or a flow that listens to this trigger and performs action whenever the trigger fires. Okay, and there are basically two types of triggers. The first one is the polling trigger. So these triggers are capable of calling your service at a particular frequency to check for new data. So whenever there is new data available, it will cause a new run of your workflow instance with the data as input. And the second type of trigger is called the push trigger. So these triggers are capable of listening for data on an endpoint, which means that they will wait for an event to occur. So whenever that particular event occurs, it causes a new run of your workflow instance. Okay, so this was all about action and triggers in MS Flow. Next question is, what do you mean by delegation in Power Apps? Okay, so the key to develop efficient apps is to keep the amount of data on your device to the bare minimum. So maybe you only need a few hundred records out of a million, or maybe a single aggregate value might be present out of thousands of entries. So when expressiveness of Power Apps formulas meets the requirements to reduce data movement across the network, delegation is the output. So in other words, or in simple words, rather than bringing the data to the app for processing locally, Power Apps will delegate data processing to the data source. So there are a few formula elements that can be delegated. However, each data source is unique and not all of these elements are supported by all of them. In your specific formula, you can look for delegation warnings as well. Okay. So what are the formula elements that can be delegated? The first one is filtering, searching, or looking up information can all be delegated. So it's possible to delegate sort and sort by columns as well. The formula in sort can only be the name of one column and cannot contain any additional operators or functions. Apart from this, sum, average, mean, max, all of these tasks can be delegated. So at this moment, only a small number of data sources support this delegation. Okay, so this was all about the delegation in Power Apps. Okay, so guys, with this, we have come to the end of this session on Power Apps interview questions. I hope you have enjoyed this session and you have understood whatever questions we have covered here. Okay, so I think we have covered roughly around 22 questions, and this, I believe, is more than enough for you to successfully clear the Power Apps interview. Okay, so thank you so much for being with us. And if you have any queries related to this video or the questions that we have discussed here, you can write your queries in the comments box and my team is here to help you with all your doubts and queries. Okay, so thank you so much for being with us and have a good day.